Welcome to the Health and Wealth Power Hour, the podcast that provides you with the knowledge and insights you need to achieve physical, mental, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Arlen Pickett, a business consultant who's passionate about helping people achieve a more balanced and healthier life. Each week, we'll deep dive into topics related to health and wealth, including retirement income planning, innovative healthcare solutions, alternative funded health plans, and specific actions individuals and business owners can take to gain control of their finances, have access to affordable quality health care, and achieve peace of mind. We'll also be joined by innovative experts who will share their knowledge and insights on prevalent topics. So, whether you're looking to grow your wealth or improve your health, you've come to the right place. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and empowered. Let's get started. All righty then. Guess what time it is? It is time for another exciting episode of the Health and Wealth Power Hour. I am your host, Arlen Pickett. Thank you so much for being with us today, man. We got a good one. You're going to like it. We're going to talk about nurses. Hey, get your mind out of the gutter. I know what you're thinking when you see nurses, but we're going to talk about real nurses. And in particular, we're going to talk about nurses in the ER. But this really, the fact that they're in the ER, the nurse we're going to talk to today is an ER nurse. This really spreads across. What's going on in nursing has spread across everything, whether we're talking about ERs or hospitals or even surgery centers in some cases. The way that nurses are being treated now is a travesty, quite honestly, because the games are being played, the quest for money, for profit in our healthcare system has changed dramatically what they are required to do. We're going to have some fun as well, because we're going to get to hear awesome nurses' view stories from the ER. So we're going to touch on a number of things, but we are super excited today to have Jen Johnson with us. She is an ER nurse and has a book coming out in October. So guess what that means? She's an author too. Jen, welcome aboard the Health and Wealth Power Hour.
Emma, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have this conversation. We had so much fun getting ready for this episode that if we had recorded all that, we probably wouldn't even had to do this part because we were having so much fun talking about stuff.
And that's just it, right? Of course, you get chit-chatting and you get going on. And then you're all like, oh, we're like 10, 15 minutes in. I'm like, oh, yeah, that, whatever.
Yeah. Maybe we should actually record a show now.
We have to, maybe not, should we? Probably.
We could just do a Cliff Notes version, right? And then just go back and tell everyone what we talked about and then just let them kind of imagine how much fun we were having.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious.
Now that's an episode people would remember, but probably for all the wrong reasons, right?
I'm sure I'd say something, that would just get me canceled immediately.
Canceled. Wow.
Are we going to go down that road already?
No, we're not going to go down that pathway. I cannot believe I haven't been already. But anyway, that's okay. I probably don't have anyone in that particular group that listens, and that's one of the reasons why. They as soon as they would ever turn it on and start listening to, be like, oh no, not this guy. Not listening to him. Moving on.
Like, you know what? We're just going to scroll on by. And I'm like, that's all you have to do is just scroll on by.
Scroll on by. There you go. Yeah. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all if you scroll past me.
I don't even know if I still have feelings after 16 years in the ER. It's shocking sometimes when somebody breaks through and you're like, oh, I've got a heart. Oh, that goes against the stereotype a little bit.
Okay, I like that starting point though. So let's talk about that journey, because when you started in that ER, I'm sure you had a very different idea of what it was going to be like than what it was really like. And so let's talk a little bit about the 16 year ago Jen versus the Jen from 10 years ago, 5 years ago to now.
Jen 16 years ago was so green and so excited and just so, ready to jump in, both feet, just, whatever I could do, would overextend myself, would go above and beyond, would come in early, would stay late, would pick up shifts, would double back. So doing a night shift and then swapping very quickly into a day shift where you really only had about 24 hours to recover, which is not great for the body. Was just so excited. And the first 5 years had a pretty wicked supervisor who, wicked in the bad sense that she just, I don't know what she did.
You're gonna have to clarify that.
I know. I'm like, wait a second, I got to clarify this. I'm like, my generation, wicked, like wicked good or wicked bad? And I don't know what I did to her, but man, she hated me. And she kind of made it her life's mission to make me miserable, which did not take much in the first few years. So Jen, 16 years ago, oh, that poor girl. She did not know what she was getting herself into, but lots of lessons learned, lots of hard lessons that I don't think I would have learned any other way than the way they had to be, because I'm super stubborn and don't really listen. So unless it's really shoved in my face very hard, I don't really, get what's going on. So, hard start, but my second job, much larger ER, back down in Southern Ontario versus Northern Ontario. And it was just such a dream compared to the first job. And so that was 10 years ago and was probably the happiest I'd been in a very long time. Got married, had kids, made so many friends, had, so many stories come out of those 5 years, and just, really found the love of nursing, was more confident, knew how to stand up for myself, knew what I was doing, and had a great time doing it. So, 10 years ago, man, that was such a joyride. It was so much fun. Jen, 4 years ago was a train wreck. Jen 4 years ago shouldn't have been nursing during COVID. Just the complete and utter burnout completely wrecked me mentally, physically, spiritually, the whole gamut, and just left me at a place where I'd never been before. And, once you start thinking about your own mortality really, really deeply, you can't help but get knocked down a couple of pegs. So, Jen 4 years ago was a wreck. Finally got medicated. Please take your antidepressants if they're prescribed to you. They may take 6 weeks to kick in, but please do. And therapy, really intensive therapy. And, I drank too much and I didn't sleep, and my poor kids were very young and driving me absolutely insane. So it was an all around kind of gong show. But Jen today, way more comfortable in my own skin and so happy and so excited to be where I am and see where we're going, and hopefully make a dent in the impact that maybe I could have, not only in a nurse's life, but maybe in nursing theory potentially. I'm swinging big. We're gonna break into nursing theory, but it's just one of those things where you always try to look at the silver lining, and the silver lining through all of that was, had I not gone through those super low lows and those really bad years, it wouldn't make today so phenomenal, and it wouldn't let me realize just how lucky I am to do what I'm doing and to have the access to, not only my family life and my friends and all that, but to be where I am professionally and to be moving forward. So it's been a heck of a ride so far. I can only imagine what the next 20 years are going to bring, but I'm excited to see what's going to go.
That's awesome. So let's step back a little bit. They're happy, you're rolling right along. Did that really was that happiness all the way up until really the pandemic? Whenever, and I won't say it really was kind of end of 2019. People say it didn't happen until 2020, but let's be honest. End of 2019, things started happening that were not usual. And then, it's not stated that it was really whatever it was, March, April of 2020, but the shit had already hit the fan, as they say.
Absolutely. So there have been a couple of jobs in between the 10-year mark and COVID where I was kind of flitting around a couple of different ERs. I tried a pediatric emerge. I tried a trauma center. Was just kind of feeling out a couple of different areas, and ran up into some other bullies that I was just like, you know what? I'm fine. I'm just gonna peace out instead of trying to deal with this. And the job that I'm in currently, I've been here 5 years, 5, 6, something like that. And it's been, it's had its challenges too, but the department as a whole has come a long way since COVID. We've really kind of bonded together. We've got a phenomenal group of nurses. Our ratios are up. So we're up to 6 nurses days and nights versus 4, which has been a huge change. Lots more support. We finally have a CT scanner, which also makes a huge deal. We finally got our surgical suite and our our labor and delivery services back up and running since COVID. So everything's kind of going the right way. So it's been interesting to watch and know what that department felt like back in, so March 2020 is kind of where that's where lockdown happened for me, because it was like, the day before my birthday and everything locked down. So I'm like, oh, what in the world is this? Like, holy shit. I'm like, okay, this is going to be fun. And, they kept telling you, oh, it's just going to be a week. It's just going to be a week. It's just going to be a week. And then, oh man, like, year,
the longest 2
year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. And like, can we not anymore? That would be great. So kind of, absolutely over it, but understand that it's still going on and all this kind of stuff. But it's thankfully way less fear and anxiety producing than it had been originally. So,
well, one of the things you said there, I wanted to touch on, and that was, you talked about getting bullied. And I know that was, as I was looking at the information, about you doing a little bit of
background check.
That is something you mentioned, right? You mentioned that is something you had to deal with, and obviously you've seen other nurses have to deal with it. But it wasn't a COVID thing. It was certainly here to get COVID. Because just the nature of what was going on with COVID, I'm not going to condone it and say it was right, but it just naturally occurred during there because no one knew what the heck was going on and were freaking out. But this COVID thing, this was not just related to that. This was almost your whole career, going all the way back to the very first job that you had when you were, as you mentioned, you were green. You had all of these things. It was rainbows and butterflies, and all of a sudden someone brought you back to earth by beating you over the head with a frying pan, as it were.
Literally. She might as well have. I still feel like it felt like that was what was happening. You'd walk into work and you pick up your little black cloud when you walked in, and you were lucky if you left it at the door when you left. But, she was the one doing scheduling. So here I am, mainly night shift, mainly weekends. And I'm like, well, silver lining, she's not here. So, and again, I'm new and I'm excited, and it's night shift, and it's kooky, and, it's a very different feeling than day shift, even in that very small hospital. But it just was, it's definitely not a COVID thing. It's, in nursing schools, they tell you, oh, don't worry, nurses, they're young. And you're going, so are you telling me this to prepare me that this is going to happen? Are you telling me this so that I feel like it's an acceptable thing to happen? I don't know where we're coming at this. I need you to clarify, because this is ridiculous. Like, we're a bunch of adults, mainly women. Why in the world are we, bothering each other to the point of, being anxious about going into shift because of what's happening, crying, before, during, after shift because of what's happening, contemplating ending our lives because of what's happening, switching jobs because of what's happening. I've swapped at least 3 jobs specifically due to bullying. And that's 3 ERs that, sorry, you lost me, and the one I actually went to management, this nurse had flipped out on me. So she was the charge nurse that day, and we were in a trauma center. I was just behind her in a different kind of little area. There was a little bit of back and forth over some of the services for this one patient. So I kept changing things in the on the tracking system, which unfortunately reset timers or whatever else. And so she had come back, flipped out on me. It's a day shift, families all around, the unit's packed. People can hear her throughout the department yelling at me. She kind of goes back to her place. I'm going, what just happened? I don't understand. And so I kind of like file that away, and I'd already been bullied twice now at this point. And I'm like, you know what? I'm too old for this now. This is not happening. So end up that day making a complaint to my manager, just be like, hey, this needs to be on your radar because this is completely unacceptable behavior. Month goes by. My manager finally comes back to me to say, hey, did you want to talk about that? I said, you know what? I'm going to give her the grace on this one. She's newer to the charge nurse position. It was an exceedingly busy day. There was a lot going on with that patient, with the different services kind of pushing her around. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drop it. Not even 3 hours later, she does it again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm so over it. Okay, fine. So then, I'm calling up my manager to be like, so, that issue that I just had that I was going to let go? Nope, we're pushing forward. So ended up having a meeting with my manager and that nurse, trying to explain that this was absolutely unacceptable behavior. And I was being told that if this is my biggest concern, then I should go work somewhere else. Like, pardon me? Like, people throughout this very large department heard you screaming at me at the top of your lungs. And over nothing. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I'm just like, you know what? I'm so over it. I'm done. I will go find work elsewhere. I thought I was coming to the CR. I thought it was going to be my dream job. I thought I was going to work trauma. I was going to be that trauma nurse, get that kind of accolade and do all these things and be that person. And I'm like, you know what? Doesn't really matter that much. I'm not going to put up with this. So I ended up leaving to come to my current workplace and was just like, oh, thank God, this is nice. Like, it's a little crazy. It's a little chaotic, but you know what? That's fine because the people are lovely and, the support staff are lovely. The doctors are lovely. Everybody's lovely, minus one or two people. I don't work with them too much. So whatever, you're not going to win them all. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to sit right here. And then COVID. So it just was, it definitely was not just a COVID thing. It is a unfortunate, boogeyman within nursing that this is something that is not only tolerated but accepted, promoted even, in the face that like, oh well, this is how we did you, like, oh that one, oh that's just how she always is. I'm like, pardon me, that's if that's coming out of your mouth, that is a complete excuse and it needs to not happen. And the fact when my manager's saying this, when I'm complaining about somebody screaming at me, and we're done. I'm clearly not going to make an impact on you. I'm very clearly not going to make an impact on her. I'm going to save my own sanity and I'm just going to exit stage left.
I was going to do a follow-up question is, why do you think that it's this way? But you kind of answered that because that's the way it's always been. It's one of those things that until there is change, dramatic change that is forced upon that field, whatever that looks like, then it's just not going to change. And it's probably going to be very slow to change. And you're going to have places maybe where you work now that are much better and have affected change there, but it's not going to spread to other places until, especially people in higher positions, filter that down and don't allow for it to be that way anymore.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a pretty strong union system in Ontario alone. And I think actually across Canada, we've got a pretty decent union system. So to get fired as a nurse, it takes a lot of time and effort and repeat offenses. And, we had somebody who was our most recent problem child, and she'd been doing this for 20 years. And, she'd had instances in med surg. She'd had instances wherever she went. She came to us in the ER as kind of a last ditch effort. She was put out. She continued to just terrorize the entire staff. I mean, granted, at least she didn't discriminate. She terrorized everybody. But like, so I mean, you didn't feel like super special when she just like freaked out, but it was one of those things where 1 minute she would be so lovely and oh, how are things going? And this, that, and the other. And you're like, hi. And you're just like, okay, maybe I let my guard down just a little bit. And then sure enough, later in the day, we'd flip a switch and we'd lose it. I'm like, hi, and we're back up. I'm just going to assume that you're nuts and you should be medicated and you are not. And I'm clearly not going to change a 20-year pattern. So I'm just going to stand back. I'm going to document. I'm going to make notes. Obviously never using patient names, but dates, what happened, my response, her response, whether or not I emailed my manager, whether or not I filled out a workplace occurrence report, because we're starting to try and really bring those about where now we can actually have a paper trail, because a lot of this is just word of mouth. Oh, so-and-so flipped out on me. Well, you bring that to your manager and your manager is going to come back with, okay, we'll write it down, send me an email, fill out a form, fill out a report. And a lot of us fear retaliation. So then it's like, well, I really don't want to do that because I know that she's only going to get more mad at me. And I can't imagine that compared to right now. So a lot of people and a lot of new nurses are kind of just scared out of it, where they're like, oh, I don't want to make a fuss. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm just going to not. And unfortunately, that allows the behavior to just amplify and continue and to only get worse.
So how much, this is maybe it's an off the wall question, but
probably not.
I think it's a valid question. How much do you think the pressures of the job, the things that happen, especially in the ER day in, day out, and just the overall environment that these individuals have worked in have had an emotional toll on them that may have caused the actions or what they're doing? In other words, have kind of, maybe they came in green and happy and everything too, and everything that happened to them has caused them to be who they are now, which it's not positive like you. They didn't turn that into a positive thing. They allowed it to eat them alive and now become this monster.
Absolutely. Because you kind of go one of two roads, right? So we understand that back in the day, you were subordinate to the doctors. When a doctor came in, you stood up out of your chair and you gave the doctor your chair. You were very much the subservient kind of mindset, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s kind of thing. And those nurses, I think, unfortunately, were the ones eating the young where it was tolerated. And it was, trial by fire. A lot of these nursing programs weren't done by schools. They were done by the hospitals themselves. So, you've got a very mishmash of education and experience. And then if somebody was coming from out of state or a different hospital system where maybe it was very religious compared to a non-religious base, maybe there was a huge difference in how things were dealt with, chain of command, that whole thing. And I can absolutely understand 2 generations ago, it sounded like they ate you up and spat you out. That was an expectation. You were going to get it. The expectation was that then you learned from that, you hardened, you put some hair on your chest, and then you did it to the next ones. That was your reward for getting through it, was then you got to do it to the next group. The benefit now is that people are going, what? Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, how in the world is this acceptable? Like, this is completely ridiculous. The workplace bullying movement has really helped with things. The exposure to violence in nursing has really opened up a lot of people's eyes. And with the violence that we're taking from the public, then you have to, then kind of put in the violence from the patients or from the staff as well. So it's like violence coming at you from all angles. So to a point, can I understand this is how you were treated? You internalize that that's how things are done. So then you just repeat. Absolutely. It's just another cycle of abuse. It's, but we're getting finally to the point of breaking it, with every passing year, it gets a little better. And if it isn't getting better in your area, either if you're willing to stick it out and try to be the change, fantastic, great on you, give it a year. If you're not making a lot of headway in a year, or if you don't have a boss that's going to really, really come up 100% behind you and back you up, just get out. It's not worthwhile. And when the hospital systems, the best thing you can do to kind of not get back at a hospital system, but kind of penalize them, is just to look at turnaround. How are your turnaround stats? How long are nurses staying? If you've got a turnaround statistic that's saying you've got 20 to 50 RNs, registered nurses, coming in and out of your department within 6 months to a year, and depending on the size of your ER, that's huge. Yeah. Absolutely insane. So then you have to think, okay, are people leaving the job? Are they burnt out? Is it just not what they want to do? Some people come into Emerge, it was their first job. They think it's one thing. It's absolutely not. It's something else. Fine. There's no fault in that. But those who come in have experience, they're ER nurses, they know what they're doing, and they just come up against a bunch of walls and they go, not today. And they just go. So you kind of have to understand where people are coming. And it takes a lot of time and energy to orientate someone coming into the ER, because it is a completely different beast, and it works a whole other different way than the rest of the hospital system, where, you've got usually a set number of patients, you've got a set, organization for the day. You understand pretty much how the rest of the day is going to go, and I have this task and this task and this task, then I get to have my lunch, and then I have this task and this task, and then I can, go around and check on my patients again, and then there's dinner time and dinner time meds, and then I'm going home, right? There's that predictability where the ERs, treat them and street them. You got to get in, get out, the sooner they see the doctor, the happier they are, the less they cuss, the faster they get out, and it's all about, I don't want to say a meat market, but sometimes it really just feels like people Tetris, where you're just trying to fit somebody into a slot so that they can get seen by the doctor, so that I can do interventions, and then we can get you home and feeling better. But yeah, it's its own world for sure.
Right. Well, so we've talked a lot about the staffing side of it, the physicians, the nurses, but you did just mention the unpredictable part, and that is who's coming through that door next. That is not on shift, right? That is the next participant in today's ER.
100%. What's good? And so it's kind of funny where every day, I don't know how it works, but every day there's usually a theme. And whether that's, dependent on my room, am I in the cardiac room? Am I just in kind of a holding area? Am I doing triage? Am I dealing with people who I know are going to be very quick in and outs? There's usually a theme. Is it chest pain day? Is it abdominal pain day? Is it head injury day? Is it broken bone day? It's the funniest thing, because after about 3 in the first 4 or 5 hours, you're like, oh, maybe it's broken bone day. Oh, broken bone day is easy. It takes a little bit extra, but these people are 9 times out of 10 going home. So I'm happy with broken bone day. Chest pain day, unfortunately, is kind of a long, drawn-out day, because there's a lot of testing that needs to be repeated, usually 3 to 6 hours after the original tests. So that, you're kind of in a holding pattern. These people are usually a little bit sicker, and you have to be a little bit more mindful and a little bit more on top of things to make sure that everything's, going the way it should go, and you're not missing something that would really impact their kind of path of care. And it's all about kind of streamlining services. So if I'm triaging you and you've got abdominal pain, thankfully I've got medical directives that say I can give you Tylenol, I can give you Advil, I can do blood work. Depending on the ER that I work in, maybe I can even do some x-rays, get all that cooking while we're waiting for the doctor, so that by the time the doctor sees you, if he or she can do a one touch, so come into the room, hello, okay, this is tell me what's going on. Okay, well, now let's review the blood work, and here's the x-rays, and is your pain managed? Perfect. Okay, and here's a referral, and off you go. That would be the ideal scenario. Usually those people shouldn't be coming to Emerge. But they're the people who come to Emerge who probably either should have seen their family doctor, a walk-in clinic, or an urgent care center is anywhere from like 60 to 70% on any.
Yes.
So, the true emergencies, And that's why people come to emergency. They're like, oh, the true emergencies. I'm like, oh, yeah, we're lucky if we see a couple of those a day, depending, and really, if I'm interested in what's going on with you, it's not a good sign. Like, if you've caught my attention, it's usually not a good sign. If I'm at your bedside more than once an hour, things are not going well, my friend.
Yeah, that's not a good thing, right? You're
Not a good thing.
You're probably not going to be there that long anyway. We're waiting to get you to the hospital at that point, right?
Absolutely. Well, and so then, I don't know how things are down in the States, but for a lot of Canada, we've got an admit no bed situation. So the hallway nursing, people kind of doubled up in the hallways. People, if you're admitted to hospital, fantastic. But guess what? It's going to take 20 to 60 to 100 hours to get a bed on the floor. In the meantime, you're hanging out in the emerge. It's super loud. It's super crazy. You're probably not sleeping. It's chaos personified, depending on the type of day that we're doing. And so it's not a super pleasant experience. And unfortunately, it goes in waves, but the winter is coming and I'm not excited. Winters are hard. Oh, the pneumonias. Mind you, the summer pneumonias have been really bad this summer. So I don't know what's kind of on the horizon there, but there's been so many pneumonias lately that, it's August. What are you doing with pneumonia? Like, I don't understand how this happened. So we're trying to figure out, is there something worldwide that's going on that maybe we're not missing out on, or maybe it's just the uptick of COVID and then leaving people with COVID pneumonias kind of thing. Not sure, but we've been lots of admissions lately, like so many admissions.
In an ER setting, as we just kind of talked about, and you say, hey, you don't know who's coming in here next. You've got to have had some crazy things. You've got to have some people that showed up. Once again, we're not going to use any names to protect the innocent.
Absolutely not. Never, ever, 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 ever will I use names. No names, no dates, no places, no nothing.
But you had to see some crazy stuff.
Oh, I mean, so we joke that we all play career ER life bingo. And so we've all got this fictional bingo card that has got all the crazy stuff, stabbed in the neck, arrow to the neck, traumatic brain injury, a brain bleed so bad that it shifts your brain off to one side, a stroke that you were able to catch and treat within 15 minutes, all these kind of things. But it's always with the kooky stories that, the one night I woke up and I'm walking up our hallway, and it's not a long hallway, but I'm walking up the hallway. It's 3 a.m. It's the middle of the night. And I hear this like screaming, and I'm like, oh, screaming at 3 a.m. This is never good. And so I walk up, and here's, EMS that the paramedics are standing there waiting to be triaged. And all I see is all this tool. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And so here's this bride who, drank a ton, took some magic mushrooms, is now hallucinating like crazy. And the husband's there, and he's still in his tux, and he's trying to calm her down. And it's just like, all I saw was all this white tool and these little legs like flailing on the EMS stretcher. And I'm like, you can't even write half the stuff that, people think they can imagine what comes in. And you're just like, you know what? I got better. Like, it's, you've got your typical, I've stuck something in a place where it shouldn't go, and it's been a while, and I'm really embarrassed. And truly, those of us who've got a couple of years in, we're like, it's not even that exciting anymore. We're like, it's not even that funny anymore. We're just like, just tell me, is it plastic? Is it glass? Is it metal? Is it still vibrating? Is it a rodent? Is it a vegetable, a fruit or vegetable? Is it meant to be up there? Is it not meant to be up there? How long? How long have we been, stuck up there kind of thing? And it's really, I don't care. I just want to know how sick you are. I just want to know how worried I should be. If it's been 20 minutes of an apple stuck up someplace, it is what it is. I'm just like, well, it's fruit. Well, you can probably wait. It's probably not going to perforate your intestine. We should be fine. Okay. You know, versus, you know, is this going to be surgical? Am I going to have to very suddenly, quickly move and, you know, and actually, do I need to keep an eye on you kind of thing? And so my job is to just assume that 99% of people who I see in a day are lying to me. Not that they mean to sometimes, you know, maybe it's just, oh, I take a pill for blood pressure. Great. Which one? The little white one.
Yes.
Yes. Man, do you know how many little white pills for blood pressure there are? Like, there's like 6 at least. And I'm like, I'm not playing this game. So I'm just like, okay, so for next time, if you could just carry a list of your medications, the dosage, how often you're taking them, honestly, that would be amazing. Ask your pharmacist for just a little printout or a summary. You know, those people who come up and they say, you know, I'm asking, oh, do you have any past medical history? Oh, no. Well, your 16 medications say different. I'm going to guess you've got high blood pressure. I'm going to guess you've got diabetes. I'm going to guess you've got high cholesterol. He's like, oh yeah, and don't forget about the heart attack. I'm like, sir, did you have stents? Was it a big heart attack, a little heart attack? You know, all these, oh yeah, and I had a stroke too. And you're like, oh, like this is all past medical history that I do need to worry about. So, you know, are you on blood thinners? Oh my God, please tell me if you're on blood thinners. It makes a big deal for a lot of things that seem very small.
Yeah.
Like a little fall from standing and you hit your head. Normally, not such a big deal. Your head will bleed like nobody's business, but, you know, usually it's not too much of a big deal. But if you're on blood thinners, now you need a CT head. It's just an automatic standard practice in Canada that if you fall, even just a fall from standing, and you hit your head and you're on blood thinners, you need a CT scan. So, and I don't know what it is about people the second they get put on blood thinners that they just want to, all of a sudden, I'm going to go skydiving and I'm like, no, I'm going to, you know, paint the sides of the house with a rickety old ladder that's, you know, older than dirt. And you're like, oh no, this isn't going to go well. Just, sir, please.
It is amazing though how people, it doesn't really matter what it is. You know, I'm in the health insurance and health. I say healthcare world because I help people get access to health care. Sometimes that doesn't involve insurance, but I still have to ask some of those same questions you just asked. I've got to, if you're worried about being able to afford your medications, then I need to know what those medications are. And people just won't tell you. And then you get them on something and then they're like, oh, I'll try to go get this med and it's $800. I can't get it. Well, did you just get it? Oh, no, I've been taking that for years. Remember when we asked this and you said you didn't take anything? Well, yeah, but I wasn't thinking about that. I mean, I just have a touch of diabetes. Just a touch. Well, okay. So, yeah, I just take that one pill and then those 2 insulins. It's just a touch.
And the 2 insulins and the insulins. You're like, oh, man. What? I worked somewhere once where there was a very high Italian population and these adorable little old nonas who were like, had been in Canada 97 years, but they were 98 years old. They didn't speak a lick of English. So then we're playing, you know, triage charades as to like what's going on. But we've got, you know, 5, 6 family members with them. And you're like, okay, can somebody who knows what? And you're trying to communicate. And the little old lady comes out with you know, do you have any past medical history? I got a touch of the shugs. And you're like, pardon me? You're a touch of the shugs. I got a touch of the shugs. And you're like, touch of the shugs. And I'm like, the diabetes? She's like, yeah. I got a touch of the shugs. And you're like, I'm never going to refer to diabetes ever again. It's just going to be touch of the shugs. And again, like, you can't write this. You just can't write it. And people, you know, sometimes you just have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, everybody's coming from different backgrounds and educations and, you know, those new to the country and all that kind of stuff. And thank goodness for Google Translate, because Google Translate is absolutely phenomenal when it comes to those who, you know, you're trying to figure out what's going on. But it's just, you're just like some people and you're just like, man, and I don't know what it is about my generation. So I'm almost 40. My generation, they come to the ER and they bring their 2 adult parents with them. So the patient comes in with EMS. The paramedics are standing there. The still married parents are rushing in at like 2 a.m. And I'm like, what's going on? And here's this, guy with just some abdominal pain. And granted, looks like he's having some pain. I'm going like, okay, I see the wedding ring. I'm assuming because of your age, you probably got kids. Why are your parents here? Like, I don't understand. I understand spouses. I understand children. I don't understand why your parents are here with you, sir. You're a fully functioning, mid-30s gentleman with some minor abdominal pain that we're gonna work you up, but you're not on the floor writhing to the point where I can't ask you any questions because you're screaming. You're just, you're kind of doubled over a bit and kind of moaning a bit. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm like, maybe it's just me, and because I'm in healthcare that I would never think to call my parents. Well, if I was going to the ER. And then we have like the Snapchatters and the Instagramming of the...
Oh, yeah.
Stop Instagramming I'm in hospital sympathy photos. It is excessive. And if you catch me in one of those photos, I'm going to make you delete it. 100% delete it. There's nothing that sets off a nurse faster than thinking she's being video recorded. Nothing. Because I'm sorry, you don't have the right to videotape me at my job. Just like I don't have the right to videotape you while you're visiting. Yeah. So please, for the love of God, stop. I don't care that you're, oh, woe is me kind of thing. We've all had those moments. Okay, fine. Don't include me. I'm not interested. I've had enough drama for a lifetime. I'm good. Thank you. That's enough.
Well, you talked about the awesomeness that you've been able to use Google Translate.
Yes.
But let's talk about the other side of that, and that's Dr. Google. How much Dr. Google when the folks come in and they've already diagnosed themselves and they come in and tell you how to do your job? Is that fun?
Oh my God. Sometimes, so it comes again, one of two ways. So either somebody who has no medical background, they've Googled. Google is going to tell you you're dying of cancer. 90% of the time, no matter what you type in, Google is telling you you're dying of cancer. You are stressing yourself out to no end. Please do not do this. Unless you have a diagnosis by a physician that maybe you can Google a little bit, fine. Even that still is kind of pushing the boundaries. But, it's when I get people coming in and they drop a word that the normal population wouldn't know. And you're like, where do you work? They're like, oh, I'm a nurse. And you're like, where? Oh, yeah, public health. And you're like, public health. That's the dream job for most of us is, Monday to Friday in a little office where, you're doing public programming. Fantastic. Good for you. You don't really have an idea as to like maybe how the ER works unless you've previously worked in the ER. So then trying to, and they've done the Googling, which then sets them up for failure because they do have a little bit of a medical background. So then they start catastrophizing and you're just like, ma'am, he just hasn't had a poop for 3 days. He is an adult. I understand. Fun fact, you can either poop 3 times a day or up to every 3rd day, and that's perfectly normal. Great. You haven't tried any stool softeners at home? No. Okay. Are you vomiting? No. Any abdominal pain? Some cramping. Okay. So it's constipation, but you're going to go to the opposite end of a bowel obstruction and vomiting fecal matter and the whole 9 yards. And then it's my job to then again peel you off the ceiling to say, no, we're actually, if you don't see me running around like a chicken with my head cut off, it's a pretty good guesstimate. They're like, oh, well, what's wrong? I'm like, to be fair, I'm just triage. I can have an idea, but I don't actually know what's going on. But we'll get tests. We'll make sure your pain's managed. We'll do all the things. And then it's the dreaded, well, how long's the wait? Oh, I hate this question. So my current job has an online weight tracker that is completely inaccurate. And it takes an average of the last 6 hours. So if you're coming in at 7 a.m, that wait timer, doesn't look too bad. If you're coming in at 2 p.m., right when everything's really starting to peak, it still looks like it's not too bad because the morning's, depending on how bad the morning's been. Oh, well, the wait timer said it'd be 15 minutes. Ma'am, this is Canada. If you are being seen in 15 minutes, you are already dead. And we are just trying to stop it. This is the only way you are being seen in 15 minutes or less. I'm take comfort in the fact that you're well enough to wait. Like take a really good, be grateful that you are well enough to wait. We will get to you when we get to you. Most of my wait times that I give out are exaggerated just a little to kind of give me buffer time. Because again, it may only be a roughly 1 to 2 hour wait, but if something emergent comes in, you're going to be waiting 2 to 4.
Oh, right.
Just the way it is. Thickest gets seen first. The whole deli ticket thing to get triaged. People, well, I was here before he was. Ma'am, he is dying. And I really can't even share that much with you. I can just say, I'm really sorry, but there was somebody who was sicker. Oh, but we've been waiting here 2 hours. Ma'am, you're also here with a sliver that's been there for a week and everything's fine. And you really can't even feel the sliver anymore, but you just want to get it checked out. Could have gone to urgent care, walk-in clinic, your family doctor, lots of options here. But the whole, we don't have any attention span anymore, doesn't play to the ER's strength at all. The only benefit is that at least everybody's got a little TV in their hands so that they can kind of keep themselves occupied. Because I can't imagine a time without, immediate entertainment at your fingertips. I started just as like Blackberries were starting to come out, and I think that was my like first handheld phone kind of thing that wasn't just your regular Nokia. It was Blackberries. So you still weren't, the internet was just starting to like pair with the devices. So most people for my first couple of years were just sitting there and they were fine. They did not perish. They were a little annoying, but again, they expected the wait. They knew it was a rural health system. There was only one ER or only one nurse for the ER. There was only one doc for the ER. It's just how it went.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that a lot of times, we talked about Dr. Google, but you personally have, you call it an intuition on kind of what's going on with someone. And I won't say how sick they are, but to a certain degree, how sick they are, whether they really should have been there or not. Enough so that you have your own little website thing out there called the Intuitive Nurse. And clearly you're known for this. So talk a little bit about that, but also kind of how do you develop that? Or was it just something that all of a sudden you realized that you had?
Yeah. So everybody's got intuition. That's kind of my baseline kind of thing. Women are much better with their intuition than men, only because women are pretty well fine-tuned from a young age to figure out who's a creep and who's not. So you have that kind of gut feeling where like, oh, I just don't like him. And you go with it. You trust it, you go with it. And that's what you do. And it's a survival technique at that point. For me, with the intuition and nursing, it wasn't until I got to my second job where all of a sudden there was this huge influx of patients. I went from seeing 6 to 10 in 12 hours to 80 to 100. And if you were at triage for those 12 hours, man, it was diabolical. It was a lot. And so to keep myself entertained and kind of engaged, I would start playing this game of like, oh, what do I think they have? How sick do I think they are? And that was before they even came in to talk to me to see what was the matter kind of thing. The person clutching their chest, and pretty suffice it to say, maybe it's a heart attack. They're obviously having some chest pain. So we'll get them in here quickly. Those kind of grabbing their abdomen or their stomach. Maybe they're just nauseous. Maybe they're, that abdominal pain kind of thing. But it got to a point where every time I would kind of guess and I'd want to follow somebody through their kind of trip through the ER because I was curious as to like whether or not I was right about what was going on. And we also had a little bit of length where we could order blood work that, there was some blood work that wasn't routinely ordered, but that you could order and you wouldn't really get your hands slapped too badly for. So you kind of learn where that line was. And so, this person's coming in, they're not doing too well. They just ran a marathon or they worked out super hard and they're having muscle cramps and this kind of thing. I'm like, oh, muscle cramps. I'm like, I want a creatine kinase, like a CK. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's going to be. So CK is just muscle breakdown. And so when someone works out for a very long time or really intensely, or even has fallen on the floor and has been on the floor for 12 to 36 to 48 hours, you can have muscle breakdown. And so then your CK rises. Well, the problem with that is if it's not flushed out of your system really quite well, it blocks up your kidneys and causes kidney failure. So I'm like, oh, okay, like, let's, hear the story. I'm like, oh, I want a CK on that. I'm like, I don't know, somewhere, I kind of sworn I heard somewhere where if they were on the floor for an unknown amount of time, you want to do a CK to make sure that they don't have rhabdomyolysis, which is then the thing where you're trying to flush out the CK from their system. And the more I kind of leaned into it, the more often I was right. So I'm like, okay. And then the game kind of increased. I'm like, let's see, who do I think is sick versus not sick versus really sick. And even if their vital signs are fine, but their color's off or they're sweating or their breathing's off or something that's very tangible that I can see or feel, okay, that's obviously a more intricate sign of like being sick. So again, follow them through their journey and they turn out to be really unwell. And then it was just like, okay, I'm leaning into it. And then you're going into the pediatric emergency or the trauma center and the volumes again continue to increase where you're having to rely on this very heavily and very quickly to the point where you're just starting to look at people and going like sick, not sick, sick, not sick. I don't know. Let's lean on the sick sides just so that we can be on the safe side. And the more I leaned into it, then I started talking about it. When I started talking about it, especially to the doctors, when you're then, you're advocating for your patients and saying, hey, like, I don't like the look of this guy, his skin color's off. And like, I don't have a good feeling about this. And the good docs will stop what they're doing and come and see your patient. Sometimes the new residents, the new docs are like, your gut, you feel like they're off. Like, this is so like, where's the science behind this? And they kind of push you off. And unfortunately, that's when those patients deteriorate. And it's not until those people who've put you off have a couple of instances where nurses and different nurses are coming to them going like, hey, something's off. And it's not until they start to try and intervene where they go, oh, I should be listening to the nurses a little bit more. I should be trusting them a bit more. So in talking about that and learning about it and putting into practice, it's like, okay, going through all these stories. And I'm like, I wonder if just on a lark, there's any actual peer-reviewed evidence-based science to back this up. And sure enough, 20 years worth of not only proving that there is intuition, but specifically intuition in nursing. And I'm just like, hey, if it's proven, now we need to start talking about it. Now we need to bring it into nursing practice and all those kinds of things. Like, we need to start talking about this, and not just at 3 a.m. when we're all goofing around at the nursing station. We need to start talking about this in nursing school and orientation, and whenever you change a job, like, we need to talk about it. And so that's where Nursing Intuition, my book, kind of came out. I started with a bunch of really good stories from COVID and my previous years in the career, which then led to the really bad stories, and just started putting the pieces together. And it was just like a light bulb went off to be like, oh, this is what I've been doing? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I kind of see it. And so now that I'm not just aware of it, but lean into it, now I can help teach others lean into it, which is so much fun to like talk to somebody, especially somebody who brushes things off as, the woo woo. Oh, it's so woo woo. You're just spiritual, whatever, just go over there. And then they'll have a patient where they then come to you, be like, hey, I just don't know about this person. And you're like, that's it. That's the feeling. That is all I'm asking you to lean into. And it's, again, you want to have science thrown at you. Here's some more science. Even if you're learning how to do this and your patient's not as sick as you thought, but you got your doctor to come and have a look at that person. Just by that doctor having another interaction with that patient's improvement will still go up. Their can't remember the word, but their outcomes will be better because that physician still came and put in that extra effort. So again, it is going to be learning. It's going to be a hit or miss, but just lean into it, put in the effort, and just believe in yourself and trust your gut, and you will go so far. And, you know, the implications are huge for absolutely everybody, not just nurses.
Yeah, because it literally, as you just said, can change the outcome for this patient, especially if you may note something that typically as you kind of said, typically they would kind of be further down the list when they come in with this complaint, but something you may have noted, you put them a little higher on that list. When this condition, abdominal pain, let's just say, they come in with abdominal pain and that's what the notation is, but just a couple of observations or a couple of questions that you ask, all of a sudden you said, okay, this is a little more serious than this other person that's been here for 2 hours already.
Yeah, and you're just like, okay, like, you know, and again, you can always start stuff, right? And with the patients in the Emerge, things change on a minutely basis. Somebody who was fine, so somebody who had been fine at triage, so I had somebody who had come in, was complaining about abdominal pain and some nausea, you know, bigger guy, whatever, middle of the night. And so we're just like, okay. And so we do the vitals. Vitals are fine. And he goes to sit in the back. And then within 2-3 minutes, the wife is coming up to me like, hey, like he just threw up. I think it's blood. Can you come over and see? And so sure enough, blood with clots all over the floor. And you're like, oh. And then all of a sudden you see that like he's now like white. Like his pallor, and then he's sweating, and now his breathing's changed. And so we rushed him into resus, and again, like started IVs, got everything going. And the kicker was that, so one of my bullies in that moment happened to be working with us as well. And this angel of a human being was like, I'm going to be sick again. And so we're like, okay, so we're all running around to try and find like a K basin or something for this guy to throw up in. He turns and throws up blood all over her, full on Carrie style, to the bully. And we're all, and you hear this like splat onto the floor because the volume and the force was just insane. And we're looking at her going like, fully expecting her to lose it. Like anyone, like I personally would probably start vomiting at that point. She, for her credit, was an absolute professional. She just, you know, very quietly walked off. She went to have a shower. She came back, and was very professional the whole time. She even accompanied this person to the surgical center because they need to be rushed out immediately. Even though that wasn't her assignment, she wasn't in that space to be able to take that patient, but she volunteered to do so. And we're all like, yeah, have at her. And said, oh, before you leave, you just have some blood clots in your hair. I'm dying. They had to take the stretcher downstairs to hose it off because there was so much blood everywhere. And I'm like, I've never seen anything like that, let alone to have somebody have such a professional reaction to it. I'm like, when she came back after transferring him, I said, look, I know you and I don't get along, but like, I need you to understand that was a kudos moment. Like, you were an absolute rock star for keeping it together and not freaking out, and then actually choosing to take that patient to our surgical center. I said, you know what? Well done. And I actually emailed my manager after many other emails about her behavior. And I just said, look, to keep everything fair, this is what happened last night. I said, I will give her that she was a consummate professional. So for that one moment, karma, man, I love karma sometimes. You know, when you get to see it in action, you don't think it happens, but it does.
Well, we talked there just a minute about the book you have coming out. So talk a little bit about the book and what the reasoning behind the book was, why you decided that you needed to put this down for others to read, for others to hopefully enjoy and to learn from.
Yeah. So the book actually started out as a trauma journal. So when COVID started and we had attorneys offering to do our wills for free, the inclination to have that understanding that you may die was right there. And so, months went by and my kind of chaos kind of worsened just with my mental state. And so I thought, like if I die with this and my kids are left behind, they were 4 and 5 at the time. I said, like, how are they going to be able to answer the question of why did mommy choose to continue to nurse when she knew it could have killed her? And so that's when the good and the bad stories came out. That's when everything kind of got put together. And, moving forward, I was just like, okay, like what else would I have wanted to know when I got into nursing? Here's a list of how to like really quickly blend into a new unit. Here are the people you watch out for. Here's who you kind of avoid, like the plague. Here's quick tips and tricks to survive night shifts. Figure out your own thing. Here's my ER pump up playlist that I always listen to before I go into work to kind of get me mentally in the spot of like getting ready to kind of go to battle. Here's all these things. And then here's all these journal prompts like built within the book to be like, hey, when was your last win? Was it your win? Was it a group win? Was it somebody else's? What did you learn from it? What could you have done better? What could have gone worse? Let's take a full step back, look at the silver lining, and then make it your own experiences. So the book has been this weird mishmash of like academic information and my stories and journal prompts and, tips and tricks for surviving. And it's been a true blessing to like not only get to go through those stories again and really dive into them and deal with some emotions that definitely had not dealt with before, but to be able to get it out was just so therapeutic. And in the time of, peak COVID, it was one of those things where like that, it kind of let the steam off a bit, where that was all that pressure and emotion built up where you kind of let it off a bit. You're like, oh, okay, like maybe things are fine. Like maybe I can do this and we can continue to go on and we'll just take it moment by moment. And if nothing else, it was just something that if I ever need a new therapist, I just have to take my book to them and be like, so here's volume 1 of all the ways that I am messed up. So here you go. We will save several hours of me sitting and telling you this myself. You can just read the book.
And the book comes out October 29th. Is that correct?
October 29th. Make you super excited.
Where can someone get their hands on that?
So currently it's for pre-sale on Amazon. It hopefully will be in Barnes & Nobles. I've just got to put together all the Ingram Sparks kind of outside-ness. It'll be on my Etsy page. It will be on RX for Growth, so prescriptionforgrowth.com. I'm going to Nurse Blake's NurseCon in September. I'm going to Health in Vegas in October, and going to try and see if I can get into a couple more conferences and hopefully one day be able to speak at some of them about like intuition and nursing and bringing it forward.
Awesome. All right. So a couple of places that you can also find things about Jen, and that is surprisingly nursejen.ca, right?
With 2 N's.
Yeah. nursejen.ca. I thought interesting couple of things that you also do, and that is you do some mentorship for nurses all the way down to if you just need to have a vent session. I started cracking up whenever I saw this. I'm like, a vent session. Man, everybody needs one of those. Everyone needs someone in their industry that they can just vent to.
And you're just like, look at no patient names, no whatever. If you don't want to give me a name, that's fine. We can just, I'll be able to hold space for you. I will, if I can maybe sense that maybe, there's something that you could tweak on or, things to follow up on or resources that you could look into, that kind of thing. Like, if you don't have any access to any really decent mentors at your place of work, call me up. 100%. I may be an expert in the ER, but I can pretty much wing it anywhere else, minus labor and delivery. I have a perinatal certificate, but I've never actually, other than my own 2 babies, I haven't birthed any. I haven't been a part of any births in quite a few years. So,
All right. So vent sessions, mentorship, and then also I think one of the big ones for right now is you help people through burnout as well. So help discuss some of that, help them put a plan in place to kind of overcome that and get them back to themselves, which is very admirable.
yeah, we need to change the slogan of, nurses eat their young, and now it needs to be nurses support their young. It's got to change. And if COVID was the catalyst and the thing to bring us all together, let's, if nothing else, let's just kind of continue the momentum, because nobody else knows what it's like than another nurse. So we should be supporting each other and helping each other through, because it is no joke, the things that we see and do and have to deal with. So, I'm here if anybody needs.
Yeah, and so we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that there is as there is in many things in healthcare right now, there is a shortage of nurses. That's accentuated whenever you go through and you see how many nurses, especially since COVID, have just decided to walk away, whether that is retire or just move to a totally different field. Some have gone back to school and decided that maybe they're going to try to take that next step up to be a nurse practitioner, maybe even go ahead and become a doctor because of the way that they were treated during COVID. But I know so many that have simply stepped completely away and said, you know what, I'm just going to do something else. I'm just not going to stay here anymore. That certainly doesn't help the shortage that we have going on. So changing that mentality of nurses eating their young to nurses supporting their young, it is vital in this time if we're going to have our healthcare system not just collapse on itself because there's no one to provide healthcare.
Yeah. If you're going to a hospital and you're getting frustrated with either the lack of staff, the lack of care, the length of time, take a good step back. And, honestly, if you were to ask one of us, what's your normal staffing ratio? And then what are you working at right now? I think you'd be shocked by some of the answers that will vary every 12 hours. Yeah.
No, I think you're exactly on. It's unfortunately over the last 18-ish months, both of my parents have had multiple hospital stays. My dad's been to the ER a couple of times, but it was almost, he was there, then moved right back in because heart issues, right? When you got chest pain and you already have known heart issues, you got a pacemaker, you got other things, and you're going to the same hospital, they're putting you upstairs as soon as they possibly can, right? So we have had incredibly excellent care from our nurses and physicians there at one of the places. At the other one,
that's fair. And again, it will vary shift by shift, day to day. It all depends on who's working and how the day is going. Because, you can catch me on a really good day, or you can catch me on I just got to get out kind of day. It's not uncommon.
But it's human nature, right? We all have good days and bad days. If to expect someone to be exactly the same every single day, you can have that expectation, but it's not realistic.
Not in the slightest. If you see us laughing and joking, please don't be like, oh, you're being too loud. Please just let us have a moment. You can give us the stink eye glare all you want, but man, sometimes it's so hard to find that little bit of joy in that moment that just give it to us.
Yeah.
We'll probably get around anyways. So, and us being happy will improve everything. So,
right.
You don't want me being miserable.
Right. And if we're laughing and joking and you're not, and you think we're laughing and joking at you, we probably are.
I mean, we have moments where it's just sometimes some of the things that come out of people's mouths are just so shocking in either, stupidity or ridiculousness or just something that it's completely like a touch of the shugs. It's just completely taken your your mind out of your current context. And it's just so funny that you just can't help it. And, there is the 3 a.m. giggles. Sometimes we get going at 3 a.m. and we just can't stop.
Yeah.
We're delirious. Let us go. It usually lasts about 15, 20 minutes at most. Just let us go.
Well, Jen, I have really had a great time speaking with you. You are an amazing individual. I am so grateful that you are sharing your experiences, that you have written this book, that you are lifting up other nurses, that you're not eating the young, but you're supporting the young, and you're really helping them learn a pathway to have the happiness in nursing that you always dreamed you would have and that you are finally achieving as well.
Yeah. Nobody's getting eaten on my watch. Man, there's nothing that makes me snap faster than just you're hard pressed not to just grab somebody by the collar and drag them out and just be like, what do you think you're doing? Are you insane? No. Stop it.
All right, folks, don't forget you can go and check her out at nursejen.ca. Her book is coming out October 29th, correct?
Nursing Intuition.
You're doing a phenomenal job out there. I really enjoyed this. I hope everyone out there enjoyed it as well. Any closing comments from you, Jen?
Honestly, you have no idea how much just a thank you means to your nurse. And a thank you note is so much better. So if you remember your nurse's name or just a date, please just send a thank you card, because sometimes that is the thing that keeps us from completely crumbling in a really hard moment, because we take photocopies of that card and we keep them. So just know that a thank you can mean absolutely everything, and coffee also helps.
Don't forget that. And coffee.
Bribe your nurses. If you bring us food, again, I'm not saying you will get through faster, but we will be happier and maybe things will work better if we're fed.
Joy is always welcome, and sometimes joy comes in a cup.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, Jen. I sure appreciate you being with us today. Hey, folks, if you like this one, make sure you go out and subscribe. You can go to hwpowerhour.com, subscribe, and get them delivered right. Get each episode delivered right into your mailbox, right into your inbox. Of course, you can always just keep going out to Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you listen to the Health and Well Power Hour. Thanks again for being with us. You can catch some of our other events, including our monthly live podcast, Why Does Healthcare Suck? That's right. Why does healthcare suck? Every single month, we dive into different reasons why the U.S. healthcare system should be better than it is, but it simply ain't. We dive into those different reasons, but also give you some solutions. So we have nurses, we have doctors, we have people all across the spectrum that come on and help you navigate the healthcare system so that you don't get caught in the same traps that others do. Thanks again for being with us on the Health and Well Power Hour. We'll catch you next time. We are out of here.